Hello, and welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Our guest today is George Sachs, a licensed clinical child and adult psychologist specializing in the treatment of ADD, ADHD, and autism spectrum disorder. Dr. Sachs is the founder of the Sachs Center, an holistic treatment center for ADHD. Is also the co-founder and clinical director of Inflow, a science-based app for adults with ADHD. Dr. Sachs is also author of Helping the Traumatized Child, Helping Your Husband with ADHD, The Adult ADHD Solution, and the Happy Med Set book for toddlers. George is also a career changer, and before becoming a psychologist, he worked in technology for IBM, Viacom, and BarnesandNoble.com. Hi, George. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, welcome.
So
Good to see you.
Great to see you. So, let's start with your background. How did you start your professional life, or better, what was your first job?
Oh, I love this question. My first job was, I was always wanting to work, I don't know if it came from parents not being able to provide as much as I wanted. My father's favorite expression was, money doesn't grow on trees. That was what he always said. So at the age of 13, I started working. My first job was changing the scoreboard at a baseball stadium in my neighborhood. And then I had my own businesses, mowing lawns, I grew up in Connecticut, and we used to I'd go around the neighborhood and shovel the snow for people. And then I probably had 100 jobs. And I mean, I'm not being hyperbolic. From little jobs, I worked at a pharmacy in high school, and then summer camp. Then I worked in summers, and then in college, I delivered chicken wings. And then, but I taught English in Asia, in Korea after college, and then in Japan. And then I came back in my 20s and worked in New York City in technology. And this was the beginning of the dot-com boom in the 90s. And it was a very exciting time in New York City. I was also at the time a writer, trying to be a television writer, and had limited success with that. That was my real passion, to write. But it was the beginning of the dot-com era, and there was a lot of opportunity in New York. And so I was working as a consultant for different companies. And then the consulting life with ADHD is very difficult, because you're always kind of scrambling, and it can be overwhelming. And so I got a job at BarnesandNoble.com. I think it's still around. It's an American, it was a big book seller, but really couldn't compete with Amazon at that time. So it went out of business. I was laid off. 9/11 happened. I ended a relationship. There were a lot of different things that happened right around I was 28 or 29. And I realized that I wasn't having success. A lot of my other friends in their 20s were achieving success. I don't mean big success, but I just like traction in their job. They were moving up, being promoted, and I was not. And this was before I had realized I had ADHD, but I was really struggling to make it in any career. And now I was approaching 30. And so I really had to do some self-analysis. I was laid off, unemployed for a good almost 6 months or a year. And then I said, I don't want to be chasing the next job every 2 years. And I wanted something where I could have stability for the rest of my life. Also, I wanted a job where when I was 70 and had gray hair, I was still respected. And I saw in technology that there was nobody older than 35, at least back then. And still, it's a very young profession. So And I majored in psychology in college, but I didn't really seriously entertain it because I had this entrepreneurial bug. But I decided it was more important for me to have stability and structure and actually have a profession where I was helping people. And so I went back to graduate school when I was 31, which is not a quick road. Really, as I say, door to door, from the day I decided to go to graduate school to become a psychologist to the time that I opened up my own practice was 10 years. So in the meantime, I did work as part of my training as a psychologist in Chicago, doing testing of children with ADHD, and then in Los Angeles doing therapy for children in South Central Los Angeles. So we would do therapy in the home, but this was all part of my training. And then I became a psychologist and worked for a famous psychiatrist in New York City, Dr. Hallowell, who wrote the book Driven to Distraction. And then I then left and started my own private practice, which I did for the bulk of my 40s. And had success with that because I really enjoyed helping people. I realized in graduate school I had ADHD, so now I was doing something not only for other people, but to help myself. And so I did that in New York City and really enjoyed that. Then, ironically, I say this ironically, during COVID, I received a phone call from two young men in London, technology guys in their 20s, and they were looking to build a therapeutic app, a digital app on the iPhone and Android for people with ADHD. And they needed some expert who actually knew something about ADHD. And we hit it off really well because I had this background in technology. I have this entrepreneurial bug. And also, I had this experience with ADHD and knowledge of ADHD, which could help build the app. So for the last 3 years, I have been working with them on building this app, and not building it, but it's now live on the App Store for Google and iPhone, and it's called Inflow. So if you have ADHD and you want help and support and information and coaching, you can go to this app called Inflow. So I've been working with them and also still growing my private practice by having other people taking over and doing some of the things I was doing. So I still haven't written as much as I wanted to create creative writing, but over COVID, I started a novel, and still that's a hobby. But I can say that 30, it was a tough time to really change careers when I was 30. But I'm very, very happy I did. But I went with my passion, which was important,
Yeah, so
It was also realistic. I say realistic passion because I could have still, had this drive to do television writing, but I was concerned that now I was getting into my 30s, and if I didn't have success there, I was going to be really, it would have been very concerning, and I would have really suffered, I think, mentally, emotionally.
So when it's incredible to hear your story, how everything spans out. And how did you discover that you had ADHD?
I didn't know until I was doing testing of children, and I would read the assessment, the quizzes, and before I would give it to the parent, and I would read it and say, "Oh my God, this is me. And then I started putting the pieces together and realized this is what I have. And this is the reason that I struggled so much of my life because of ADHD. So it was very helpful. They say some people don't like labels, like you have ADHD or you have autism, but I actually find it very helpful because then you can know yourself better and then you can make decisions from that, like I said, 80 people, freelancing is very hard for people with ADHD generally, because you have to be super organized and you have to be, but we also don't like to really work for other people as much. So it's kind of a difficult bind, but I do think structure is very important with ADHD, and graduate school provided me a lot of structure. Just do this thing and then do this thing. I call it hoops of fire, graduate school. I had to just keep doing these things that they asked me to do until I was done.
So how did you help yourself with your ADHD before starting to help others?
Well, number one is to find something you're actually excited about, not just stability or money, because ADHD is not really a problem of attention. It's in the definition, but really it's a problem of motivation. And so if you're excited about something with ADHD, you can pursue it and hyper focus on it and get a lot of things done. But if you're bored and it's not interesting, nothing happens. So that information that I had ADHD really told me I have to pursue my passion and until I'm not passionate about it anymore. And so when these guys called me, I was getting a little bored with the private practice life, it was fun to help to build the practice and work with a lot of people, but ultimately towards the beginning of COVID, I was just sitting in my office all day. And then I realized I needed maybe another career change, not a dramatic one, but doing something a little bit different to stimulate me more than just sitting in my office all day.
So let's talk about ADHD. What is it, how it can be defined, and how it can be diagnosed in adults?
ADHD is a genetic neurodevelopmental challenge, deficit. So it's hereditary. Okay, so if you wonder if you have it, check your parents. Do they have a lot of problems with disorganization and impulsivity and procrastination and maybe difficulty managing their emotions? That's one clue. If somebody in your family has it. But really, like I said, the main problem is in adults is getting things done. It's like you just can't have the energy to finish a lot of things, especially if they're boring. Paying your bills, always behind on your bills, disorganized, always overwhelmed, always feeling like you're not doing enough, always feeling like other people are succeeding around you, getting laid off, getting fired, so like actual problems, in life manifest because of ADHD in undiagnosed ADHD in adults.
And how can ADHD affect people's careers? Well, you mentioned like being laid off, but maybe in the day-to-day life as well.
Affect their career?
Yes.
Well, like if you're in a job you're not particularly excited about, you don't finish things on time, you're always late, your work may be not satisfactory to your supervisor, you miss details, you are not a detail-focused person. So if you're really struggling in your career, in your job, that could be one of the reasons, ADHD.
So what are some effective techniques that help you reduce the negative impact of ADHD?
Well, the number one thing is to find out if you actually have it. Okay, and that's where the value of the label is, because so to get tested. And now you can go online, you can call my center and get tested. But most big cities in the United States have some sort of ADHD testing. In Europe, London, there's a couple places. There's a place called ADHD 360. It's the company. They have clinics, but any psychiatrist or psychologist should be able to diagnose you. And in Europe, in the UK, I think you can put your name on a list for the NHS. In the rest of Europe, it's a little bit more difficult. For example, in Italy, I think there's one good ADHD doctor. In Florence, maybe, because I have a client in Italy, and he struggled to get an appointment with this person. I think he had to go to Switzerland to get the right medicine. So some countries, even though they're developed, are behind in ADHD treatment. I had another client in Finland who was actually had a very negative experience with the doctor there because a lot of countries in Europe don't think ADHD is like a real thing, or they think people are complaining and making excuses and just saying they have ADHD. So you have to be very careful to find somebody who really specializes in it. Otherwise, you may get actual negative experience with the doctor, which is not uncommon in mental health. So look for somebody who actually specializes in it. The next thing is to really see that it's a motivation problem, and therefore you have to be excited about what you're doing, generally excited every day. That doesn't mean, every task is fun and exciting, because paying your taxes or, dealing with certain paperwork may not be fun, but generally speaking, this job excites you. And people will feel that excitement from you. But more importantly, you're going to be able to focus more and accomplish more, because ADHD is a motivation deficit. And if the reward is not enough for us, then we won't move forward. So I describe doing boring things almost like climbing Mount Everest. You're at the last bit, and you have, when you climb Mount Everest, they take one step every 5 minutes because of the lack of oxygen up there. And that's what ADHD feels like when we're bored. We just can't move forward towards something. So recognizing you have ADHD, getting help, which means possibly medication. That's not the only answer, but it's certainly something to try. And then behavioral coaching, and that's provided by Inflow, the app that I help create. But you can find coaches in now. There's a lot of coaches for ADHD. Okay, so one of the things that's really helpful is getting outside support, and that's because if we don't have the internal motivation, a coach is great to get you excited about things and to get you to move forward. So don't do it alone.
So we mentioned what are the negative aspects of ADHD. Are there any positive sides that make someone, I don't know if the word suffering is the right one, or being impacted by ADHD, also having some qualities that are different from someone that doesn't have ADHD?
Well, I think if you are actually doing the right job and the right career, you can have a lot of energy and a lot of passion, which people feel. People with ADHD are often impulsive, but there's a correlation between impulsivity and creativity. For example, if you go to a brainstorming meeting at work, the ADHD people are going to be able to fire off ideas, because you kind of have to be a little impulsive to brainstorm, right? The people that are not impulsive, they can't generate as many ideas. So there is some research that people with ADHD can generate more ideas quickly. So that's one thing. What else? I think people with ADHD have something called a fear of rejection, or a rejection sensitivity. This is basically, we are afraid we're going to be rejected, but there's no evidence we're going to be rejected. And I believe this comes from an actual history of rejection, because when we were younger and had ADHD, there may have been reasons why we were rejected by peers or jobs. I was fired from a number of jobs because of ADHD. But we take that forward into our life, and it can be a challenge because we're always worried people are going to reject us. But the silver lining is that we get really good at reading people's faces and emotions because we're kind of looking at them a lot to make sure they're not angry at us. So that looking teaches us a lot about people's expressions, and we get really good at that. That's why a lot of people with ADHD are very empathetic because they can read emotions well, almost too well. And we can fall into something called toxic empathy, where you're overly empathetic with somebody. So a lot of people with ADHD, when they ride, this happens to me when you ride the bus or the train, most people just ignore everybody. But with ADHD, you look around and you start feeling the energy and the feelings of everyone, and then it can be overwhelming. So we're very sensitive to emotions, which can be a positive thing, especially if you're a teacher or a salesperson or a therapist, where you want to you have to be able to know what the other person is feeling.
So there is a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. What do you think could be done more to include people and help them thrive in the workplace, people that are living with ADHD?
Well, we have a long way to go with that. I think autism is actually further ahead with this idea of inclusion and acceptance. Some of the challenges with autism are with social skills and social interaction. But with ADHD, it's a lot about getting things done and getting things done correctly, which a lot of people with autism can do, generally speaking. But with ADHD, this is a real challenge. So there's still a lot of judgment about people with ADHD in the workplace. So telling people you have ADHD, telling your supervisor, your boss, your HR department is still not an easy decision, because you don't know if they're going to judge you as lazy or not as competent. So we have a long way to go here with full inclusivity with ADHD. But I think if it's a big enough company, and you tell your HR department, maybe they can find another job that's better suited for you. So that doesn't necessarily mean they have to fire you, but maybe if your skills are better people oriented, or you need something more active, maybe they can find something in a larger company that suits your personality with ADHD better than just sitting at a desk all day doing Excel spreadsheets. And so I do think companies are waking up to this. And in the United States, and I think in Europe, there's a law called the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I don't know what it is in Europe, but I'm sure it's the same. And basically that if you have a disability and you disclose it, then you are protected. It doesn't mean they can't fire you, but they should provide accommodations and work with you. But we still have a little bit further to go with society and society's appreciation and acceptance of ADHD.
Mm. So each of us, with our choices, can have a positive impact in the world. How do you feel through your work you're making the world a better place?
Well, I mean, I see it with my individual clients, which is why I'm very happy I made that career choice to go into helping people, because I get the satisfaction. That doesn't mean it's not always hard, always easy, but when there is growth, when I can see growth in a client, then I feel really good. And regarding the app, we get a lot of feedback about people who are so happy to have found the app and feel, finally like they're understood and appreciated and included in a community. And, they're actually learning how to better manage their lives. And so that really makes me feel good.
So we're reaching the end of this episode, and I'm sure so many people have found your sharing very insightful. So first of all, what type of advice would you give to anyone living with ADHD during their journey to self-realization?
The most important thing is, well, education and then self-acceptance. So the problem is with ADHD, because of the history of losing jobs or rejection, we generally have low self-esteem and don't feel good about ourselves. And so it's very important to, and if you don't feel good about yourself, it's hard to make changes, right? We get stuck in this kind of depressive, sad place about ourselves. But if you can find a community of people with ADHD online, I recommend TikTok because there's a lot of interesting people there. And of course, the app, then all of a sudden you don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're the only one. That means you have less anxiety and then more self-acceptance because all these other people are now sharing their feelings about their ADHD and you're sharing and they're accepting you. And then that leads to self-acceptance, you know? I mean, this is the basis of any kind of recovery, like Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, the power of the group. So that's very important to find a group so that you start accepting yourself and you don't beat yourself up as much. And then you start learning about, oh, that's ADHD. Oh, that's what that is. Okay, now I need a tool to work on myself. And then, you know, that's where coaching or Inflow or different communities can help you learn tools to improve time management and organization. But ultimately, it's self-acceptance because there's some things we just can't change with ADHD, like how I had a cleaning person clean my apartment. It looked amazing yesterday. And today I'm wondering what happened. How did it get so? So, you know, I don't beat myself up. I don't say, well, what, you know, I can't believe I did this. I just think I'll have to have her come back soon. So I think that's really important. Awareness that you have ADHD, self-acceptance through community, and then actually working on, you know, slowly working on behavior changes.
So before the last question, if anyone would like to reach you, how and where they can find you?
Well, they can find me at, they can Google me, George Sachs, and then that will probably bring up my New York, United States private practice, and also maybe Inflow, where they can download the app. I do a lot of the recordings inside the app too, so they can find me in there.
Great. So now the last question that we ask to every guest on the Career Changer. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, I could say something like it's going to work out. Everything's going to work out. But I don't know if that's the best advice. I guess I would say, you know, take advice from people. Because when I was younger, I didn't really want to listen to other people's advice, or I thought that was boring, or, you know, everybody does that. I want to do something different. But I think there's a lot of value in really in you know, the wisdom of other people. But sometimes with ADHD or even just being a young person, it's very hard to take feedback, you know, because we're rejecting our parents as teenagers to become independent. But that independence is valuable, but there's also a wealth of knowledge and information all around us. So I guess I would say it's going to get better. And also there's a lot of people that want to help you if you listen.
Well, thank you, George, for joining us today and sharing your inspirational story and wisdom with our listeners.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
And a last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers.